necessary to write. Welcome again. Our goal today is to give all of you the skills, the tips, and the confidence to write letters to editors that are really effective because they A, get published, they B, get the attention of the people who need that information, C, they arm those people such that they feel comfortable sharing that information with others and or taking action on their behalf. And it does it in a pithy, easy for you to write letter to the editor. So that's our goal, to impart that information for you today and actually give you a few minutes at the end so you can use the information we've just given you to try to create one and maybe even send it in if you feel comfortable with that. So we know how busy you are. We want to keep within the 1 hour. What I want to first do is introduce the three presenters today, and then I want to ask each of you to just really briefly tell us who you are, where you're located, and then we're going to launch into it. So the first person I want to introduce is Blake Marquez, Senior Program Associate with Sunstone Strategies. Blake's job is getting public attention and awareness on vital issues related to climate change, and she does it amazingly well and has an expertise in letters to the editor that she's going to share with us today. And we're so honored, Blake, that you're doing that. Thank you. Next, I want to introduce Alex Chang, our own co-lead for CHN on 1866. Alex is a student at UCLA from LA County with an interest in public health and sustainability. And after Blake shares hints and to-dos and not to-dos on LTEs, Alex has prepared some wonderful templates for us that he's going to share with you to make your life easier when you're writing these letters to the editor. Third person is myself. My name's Thea Spitzer. I'm co-lead with Alex on 1866 this year for CHN. I have a master's in public health. I have a PhD in organizational consulting, and I spent 30 years with tech and high tech and healthcare. So we're really pleased to be here with you today. Would each of you just take a couple of quick seconds, 10, 15 seconds, tell us who you are and where you are. Which one of you wants to go first? Bill, please, go ahead.
Just to get the ball rolling. My name is Bill Pevick. I'm a retired professor of vascular surgery from UC Davis. I live in Sacramento, and I've been involved with environmental issues for about 4 or 5 years.
Lovely, thank you. Ritu, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ritu Gupta. I live in the Bay Area, Fremont. I've been in healthcare now for 20 years and involved with environmental stuff for a year.
Thank you so much, Ritu. And I see we have one other person just joining us right now. Wendy, hi. I don't mean to put you on the spot. We were just doing a quick go round introducing who we are and where you're located. Would you mind jumping in and introducing yourself?
Sure. Sorry, I was just grabbing my lunch. I'm Wendy Bernstein. I'm a psychiatrist, adult psychiatrist working remotely, and I am in my little backyard office in North Berkeley.
Lovely. Thank you all for joining us. So I'm going to turn it over to Blake now. She's going to share information on what is a letter to the editor. How does it differ from an op-ed piece? How to create it, where to send it, some vital information. Blake, it's all yours.
Awesome, thank you. Well, it's nice to meet everyone. And so interesting, I think, to have the opportunity to be in a virtual meeting space with like such amazing healthcare professionals. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, just one moment. Okay, is everyone able to see this? Okay, awesome, sounds great. Okay, like Thea mentioned, my name is Blake Marquez. I am a senior program associate at Sunstone Strategies. I work specifically on polluter accountability items. So this is specifically going to be focusing, the work I do specifically focuses on a lot of fossil fuel companies and holding the gas and oil industry accountable. So that's my main area of expertise. And let's go ahead and get started. We could jump right in. So let's go over the basics. There's some key differences between an op-ed versus a letter to the editor, though they are very similar in their purpose and their benefits. So first of all, an op-ed is going to be a lot longer form. These are typically about 600, 650 words. And this is going to be the commentary of someone who's independent of the newspaper and you're expressing an opinion about a newsworthy issue. The pros of writing an op-ed versus an LTE is you have a lot more words to kind of describe and walk through the argument that you're putting forward, and you have more time to build out, like your argument and offer more evidence and things like that.
Wait,
But it does take a
the
yes.
slides, for some reason, we can't see. It just says loading on your slides. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't know. Is that what other people are seeing too?
Yes, they were there for a moment. We saw the first slide and then it went away.
I think it might have been when you went into screen sharing mode, as opposed to when we could just see like the editable ones. What happened?
Let's see. Okay, right now, are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see the slides this way.
Now it's back. Yes. Oh,
Okay,
now it's
if I
gone
do this really
again.
fast. Okay. I wonder why that's happening. Let's see.
If it doesn't load soon, I'm going to suggest, because Amanda's going to put them in the chat. There it is.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and go through it this way.
Yeah.
Not traditional, but if this is what works, then let's go ahead and move forward here. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys for your grace and patience. So typically an op-ed will take longer to draft, pitch, and place. We typically want to allot or budget about 10 hours from start to finish. So just for context and an example, I'm working on an AB 186 specific op-ed that I'm working on with one of our community partners that we've been working on for a few weeks now. So I spent about a week or two really drafting and fine-tuning that pitch, working with a partner, getting their feedback, going through internal edits and things like that. And then last week and this week will be spent pitching, and still has not been placed yet, but hopefully will be soon. So just to kind of get some context about the length of time it actually takes to draft and then go back and forth between partners and their internal team and getting placed. But when they are placed, super effective, especially depending on placement. At Sunstone, we've placed tons and tons of op-eds from places like LA Times to Washington Post or Cal Matters. And these publications, they have a lot of really great readers, and legislative leaders, political leaders are going to be viewing these. So they can be very influential and strategic when necessary, but not always the most time efficient. So what we're going to be focusing on today, which is a lot more plausible and realistic for most people to write, are letters to the editor. These are going to be similar to op-eds in that they are reflecting the opinion of a person that is independent of the newspaper itself. So typically this is going to be a reader's response to an article or an editorial that's already been published in a paper, but it can also be used to start a conversation. So let's say, there's a news publication in your area, in the Bay Area, and let's say it's like the Mercury News, and there's tons of coverage on so many different issues, but you're saying, hey, I'm not seeing any coverage about idle wells in our area, and I really want to talk about this. So you can draft a letter to the editor and saying, letting them know there's this really important bill that I think California and the Bay Area needs to be talking about. This is why it's important. And then end with, XYZ, this is what we should do. Letters to the editor are really beneficial because they're typically short form. So they're pretty quick to draft. Usually you should aim for about 150 words, and the shorter the better. editors, when they're reading these LTEs, they're looking for something that's kind of like quick, pithy, to the point, and they don't want to spend a lot of time, you know, reading like a full length piece of which would be suited more for an op-ed style. So something that's really important when you're writing an LTE is figuring out your audience. So for those of you that are joining this training, you should think about where you're located and exactly what readers you're trying to reach. So if you're in the Southern California, LA area, you know, you might think of writing an LTE to the Times, the Daily News, OC Register, Daily Breeze, or, you know, Bay Area, I know we have someone in like North Berkeley, we have East Bay Times, Press Democrat, The Chronicle, SAC-B, and I have a few more publications listed throughout regional areas of California. But I think being familiar with your local outlet is really important and identifying key opportunities to draft an LTE. And then from an organizing perspective with 1866, you know, like when we are working to mobilize our organizers or advocates, we're thinking, you know, we want people calling on their calling on their representatives. So finding out where are key constituents going to be living that they can submit these op-eds and directly call on the representative who probably reads the publication that it's being sent to. Okay, so now that we have kind of the basics formula of an LTE, now we need to know when is the right time to draft. So typically LTEs are really useful to review or unhelpful or opposing media narratives. So if we see an article come in or an op-ed that's maybe from a pro-oil industry person, and they're saying, oh, idle wells are assets, or, you know, laws and regulations already exist that are working. And this is messaging that we want to oppose, you know, that's bringing down our argument. This is a key opportunity for us to respond very quickly and say, you know, I'm responding to this article and here's why I think this is wrong. This is a really great way to respond to coverage that's not favorable to our campaign efforts. And then on the flip side, it can also be used to reinforce positive media data narrative. So if there's an article that says, oh, the idle wells crisis in California is getting worse and we need to do something about it, then we can also make the decision to write an LTE and say, I'm responding to this article and I think it's really great. I agree. Here's another piece of evidence or information, XYZ. Typically we do draft letters that already refer to an article that's been published. And when we do this, we want to respond to an article that's been published within the last 7 days, so about 1 week. But the closer to publication date is the better. And then, like I mentioned before, it can also be used to start a conversation. So either approach works, but just some things to keep in mind. Okay. So now that you know the basics, you know when to respond, you know, audience, things like that, now you're actually taking the time to sit down and write the LTE. It's really short and brief, which is good because it's not a lot of text, but also can be a little challenging because you need to make an argument that's quick to the point and compelling. But the great thing for all of you at Climate Health Now is that you're all public health experts. So this is something that you should really lean into and showing your expertise. For AB 186 specifically, a public health messaging is especially compelling. We have polls that show that public health messaging is especially salient and really, really effective for both regular Californians and lawmakers alike. So when you're writing, you know, if you're someone that works in public health or you worked in public health for a number of years, you know, you truly are the expert. You can say, you know, from my experience as XYZ, I can see like this bill is going to help our community in this way, or things like that. And because LTEs are such short form pieces, you're going to want to go ahead and stick to one idea. So I think while it's easy to kind of like build out this whole argument and, you know, like draw on multiple ideas of why we need this bill, that might be suited for something like an op-ed versus an LTE. We want something that's kind of be like quick and to the point. So LTE on 1866, for example, might be like, I'm responding to this article that says this, but in my opinion, as a public health professional, in my experience, this is why I think we need this bill and it's important. And then you want to call out a specific target. So then you say, that's why I'm calling on Assembly Member XYZ or Senator XYZ to support this bill in the legislature. And you want to end with that clear call to action. So these are, I think, like 4 main pillars that you kind of want to abide by when you are drafting your LTE. So after this, you've written your LTE and it's all ready to go, then you're ready for submission. Submission details are usually going to be specific to whichever publication you're submitting to, but a lot of them have pretty similar guidelines. They'll have a pretty similar word count cap, and they'll typically want to have your contact information like your name, email, phone number. But what's important is to make sure that you're abiding by all of their rules and guidelines, and you can typically find all of those online. And then once you submit, they will typically email you back and let you know that they're moving forward with publishing or not. But sometimes they'll just go ahead and publish, so it's something to keep an eye out on. Yeah, and then I want to go ahead and share some examples that we have here of published LTEs that have come from Sunstone. So we have published in the Chronicle. This is an example of one that's on state solar policy. We have another in Automotive News, which is a more industry-specific publication. And I believe all of these slides will be shared to you all, so you'll be able to click through these links and go ahead and read the LTEs for yourself. But don't want to take too much time, so I'll let you all go through those on your own. I also want to finish up by offering some AB 186 specific resources. So we have the Climate Health Now Action Fund Health Fact Sheet. This is super compelling, has a lot of really hard-hitting, concrete facts and figures on the health impacts of idle wells and how 1866 can help improve these. We also have the AB 1866 fact sheet from the Office of Assemblymember Greg Hart, who is the bill author. And then lastly, I wanted to offer up the Make Polluters Pay California website. This is where we're going to have a map of California, and LTE authors can go ahead and check here to get a breakdown by district, assembly and senate, city or county, and that's going to show you the number of idle and orphan wells in your community, the top drillers in the area, the cost it's going to take to plug those wells, and the number of jobs that are going to be made. So those top lines, I think, from these 3 are going to be super helpful when drafting. Okay, and that is my last slide for you all. Thank you so much for letting me take some time and walk you all through this. I went ahead and offered my work email here and then my work phone number in case anyone has any questions about anything, or you want to follow up on anything from this presentation. Go ahead and feel free to reach out to me. And I will go ahead and pass it back to Thea. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Blake. We actually have a couple minutes before we're going to turn it over to Alex. Wonder if anyone has any questions or comments regarding all the wonderful information that Blake has shared with us in such a quick succession. I know it was a lot to go after. Does anything occur to you that you want to ask her about while she's here with you in person?
Like, I was wondering if you could go back. I know that we're going to have get the slides later, but I was wondering if you could go back real quickly to the slide where you had kind of a list of the components for the letter to the editor, that it ended with call to action. There was like 3 or 4 bullet points. Or just read out what it says.
Okay, I just pulled it up. Let me know if you can see this. So first, you want to show your expertise. So as public health professionals, this is going to mean really leaning into your experience, your title, your education, things like that. And then you're also going to want to stick to one idea. We want something that's going to be quick, to the point, and staying on topic. Then we want to make sure that we're calling out specific targets. So for 1866, right now we're in Senate appropriations. We want to be sure to go ahead and be calling out senators from whichever district that you belong to. And finally, you want to make a clear call to action. So typically for 1866, it would mean, Senator XYZ support AB 1866 to protect Californians or to protect public health, something of that sort.
And I'll
What
be
other
going
kinds of
through
targets might
some.
there be besides like the senator? So I'm just like sort of in general, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
I would also think to target legislative leaders more generally, or some people I think are calling more directly on the governor. So we really just want to be calling on our climate leaders in Sacramento.
Okay, thanks.
And
Super.
I'll go over a couple of examples shortly, just so you have a good idea of what that looks like as well.
Thanks, Alex. We'll turn it over to you in 1 second. We have time for one more
Perfect.
question for Blake. Anything else you want to ask her based on what she shared here?
I have a question, Blake, about who. So I guess my sense is that the elected officials' offices have some sort of ability to like scan the relevant newspapers and pick up, like they're somehow tracking things. Like if it's a bill that is being authored by their member or their member is called out by name, is that true? And is that, or how, who else is kind of reading LTEs?
So typically staffers will be the ones that are regularly monitoring the news cycle, and we can expect that staffers will also be keeping an eye on if the representative of the office they're working at is mentioned in any type of news coverage. So yeah, even if the assembly member or a senator or legislative leader themselves are not directly seeing it, typically a staffer will see it and then pass it along to them.
Super. Thanks so much. Alex, I'd like to turn it over to you now. Alex has created some phenomenal templates to make your job writing these LTEs even easier. Alex?
Yeah, thank you so much, Thea, and thank you, Blake, for those slides. That was very, very helpful. So just a quick introduction. I know Thea introduced me in the beginning. My name is Alex Chang. I am her co-lead on the AB 1866 team with Climate Health Now, and I'm also a student at UCLA. And I'm also a little bit sick, so I'll try to get through this clean as possible. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think, can everyone see this okay? Can everyone see the doc that I'm on? Should be, yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, just to review a couple of the points that Blake was talking about. Letters to the editor are much shorter than an op-ed piece, and also, and because of that, they're it's generally pretty strict on how on their sides. They want to be concise, to the point. So you want to make sure that you're under that 200-word limit, or whatever the newspaper's limit is that you're submitting to. Some newspapers also run longer op-ed pieces. We're not going to go over that today, but that's also an option if you are passionate about something. And as Blake said before, if you have a specific local angle, then use it. That is super, super valuable in writing an LTE. So referring to our recent experiences with wildfires, especially this summer, heat waves, flooding, and their impact on health. And also, as Blake said, we're health professionals and people take our word very seriously. Well, I'm not a health professional, but all of you are. And your voice is very, very important. So now, yeah, I'm going to go over a couple of examples of what an LTE looks like, and based upon what it's responding to. And yeah, I'm just going to go over some templates that you all can use. So the main type of LTE that Blake and the Sunstone team were focusing on are a responsive LTE, which is an LTE sent to a newspaper in response to another article, either in favor or against it. Self-initiated LTE, which is sent without a specific prompt within the newspaper. So it doesn't have to directly respond to a specific article or op-ed previously posted. So now I'm just going to go back up to the responsive LTE for one of the prompts that we have created. Usually, again, you want to be concise, to the point, and you want to use all of the tools that you have available to you. So, dear editor, I am writing in response to this, published on this date, concerning this. As a doctor, as a nurse, as someone working in public health, I find that this article is, let's say in this case, it's an article saying that the AB 1866 bill is bad for whatever reason. You just want to stick to your one main point, which would just be that I find that this article, I disagree with it. I think it overlooks the threat that idle oil and gas wells may pose to the public and environmental health. And then from there, this is where your expertise and your knowledge come into play. So this article suggests that AB 1866 would be bad for the economy and it would be bad for the oil industry. And although these concerns are important, we can't overlook the dangerous implications of a business as usual approach. Oil and gas wells emit methane, which is bad. They also release benzene, formaldehyde, and a lot of other dangerous things. So usually when you start your LTE, you want to start with an introduction. You want to give your main point. I like to call the meat section. This is where you want to introduce facts. And then at the very end, like Blake was saying, you want to introduce a call to action as well. So in this case, it would be AB 1866 is vital to protecting public health and is a key piece of legislation in California's path toward a sustainable future. Again, reiterating your expertise as a type of health professional, I encourage this state senator to support this bill. And then sincerely, your name, credentials, where you live. So that is an example of a responsive LTE. I also wanted to go back up and look at one of the links that Blake and Sunstone shared, because I was looking through a lot of these when I was creating these templates myself, and I thought that this was a great example as well. This one is talking about fossil fuels and construction. Yeah, here it is. So it's this one, like I said, it's concerning fossil fuels and it's concerning construction. This particular letter to the editor just starts off with the basic point, saying that it's in reference to an article. This is one of those responsive LTEs. In reference to this article, it simply isn't true that building affordable housing is in tension with our state's climate policies, as this columnist may suggest. So that's their main point. That's the subject of their LTE. Then they touch on their expertise. My job as a director of sustainable design for one of the state's largest affordable housing developers is to identify the lowest cost pathway to building homes while maximize long-term savings. That's where they get into their expertise, right? And also at the same time, they get into the meat of what they're saying. Based on economics alone, we choose to build homes with electric heat pumps and rooftop solar, a decision that eliminates gas bills, lowers electricity bills, and shields households from long-term utility cost escalation. And then they just continue with the meat of what they're saying there. And then at the end, like Blake was saying, they have a call to action, right? Governor Gavin Newsom's efforts to accelerate our state's climate work will not create these building requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So all of the basic points of the LTE are right there. Now, let me see if I can get back to where I was. There we go. Okay, so that's a responsive LTE. At this point in time, does anyone have any questions about anything?
Actually, I do, for both you, Alex, or Blake, whoever of you wants
Mhm.
to this question. I love that both of you put in a call to action as being important in the conclusion of this LTE. And both of you showed examples of putting in a specific senator or a specific assembly member's name. What do you guys think about saying, I impeach all of you, I beg all of the senators to please pass this bill that is now in appropriations? Can you make a general call to action that's to all senators rather than one? Is that effective?
Blake, I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, I think that works fine to just say like you want legislative leaders to support. Either way, I think being both specific and maybe a little more general could work. I think maybe if you're in a region where your senator is someone that we're especially targeting, then it might be important to call them out by name. But for the most part, I think just naming at least some organization or body of representatives, lawmakers is good.
Super, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Alex based on these great templates that he shared? He shared one that's in response to an article, and he shared one that is just self-initiated, that isn't actually in response. Any questions any of you have for Alex?
I have a question.
Bill. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Yes, thanks. Sorry. I like the idea that you both have mentioned about a reactive email. I do not subscribe to my local newspaper. Is
Mhm.
there a way, not being a subscriber, to search and find if there has been a recent article that I could react to?
Blake, I'll let you touch on that one again because I know that that's Sunstone's thing.
Yeah. So at Sunstone, we as a public affairs firm, we monitor the news cycle pretty regularly. And what we do is we will collect climate clips and we'll put these out twice a week. So if you'd like to be added to that list that shows these polluter accountability highlights, we can add you to that. Something else I might also suggest is just creating a Google alert. So you can create a Google alert specifically for AB 1866 or keywords like idle wells and things like that. And daily, it'll give you different articles and news coverage that come up with those keywords. That's one way that I kind of keep track of legislative media hits as they come in, just in case things kind of slip through the cracks. And of course, I think like we'll also be flagging any big pieces that we think come up that could use some LTs in response.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. Anyone else have any questions for Alex or Blake on the content for LTEs, how you find the newspaper, how do you use this template? Anything else? Yes, please, go ahead, Rita.
So thank you for asking that question, Bill. That was one of my questions. I have a follow-up. So now that you have access to the news article, how do you find the contact information of the editor? Do you email the editor? Like, what's the process?
I believe that it's a case by case thing, kind of based on what the newspaper is. Blake, correct me if I'm wrong. So Wendy, do you have? I see you raising your hand. Is it for a question or is it for a response?
It's for the next question. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
sounds good. Yeah, Blake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's a case by case thing. So what is this? So this was from the LA Times. So if I go to LA Times letter to the editor submission, then each newspaper online will usually have their own link to where you can go and you're able to just use a form on their site to fill all of that out with the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Then Wendy, I see that you had a question.
I get the New York Times online and they have this California sort of newsletter thing that they send. And so it's making me wonder if it's worth targeting them. I don't know if there's like a separate editorial for their California beat, but just curious if that's a reasonable strategy.
Blake, what do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
The New York Times has a California newsletter that they send out to subscribers in California. And so I'm wondering if that would be a place to consider writing to.
If it's California specific, I think that's fine. But I think maybe something to just also consider is the fact that it is like New York Times. But yeah, California specific, I think is fine.
Super. Any other questions for Alex or Blake? Okay, not hearing any, I'm going to ask each of you to take a few minutes to apply what has been shared with you to see if you can create either a self-initiated, which is easier right now because you don't have a specific article in mind that you're responding to, or if you do have one, then a response article, a response LTE. We're going to actually give you about 8 minutes to do that. And in the hopes that you might even be ready to hit submit and send it during this hour. And if not, it'll at least give you the confidence to know you can do it in short order as soon as we end this session. So I'm going to ask all of us to stay on here, stay visible, but take your attention for the next 8 minutes and turn your attention to writing an LTE to some particular newspaper. And I'll call you back if you can leave your sound on. So I'll call you back in about 7, 8 minutes now.
And
Yeah,
feel free
and
to copy and paste, sorry, verbatim from Alex's template. And then like you can take that writing and modify it, but feel free to start by copying and pasting entirely.
yeah, there's a couple of different examples. If Amanda thankfully sent the link to this Google Doc. So there's the two there's a self-initiate example, and then there's the responsive example. And then if you scroll down, there's a couple more specific examples for LTEs. So if you like the way one of them sounds more than the others, or you feel that you can relate to the points that are being addressed in one of the LTEs more than others, then by all means, that's what I encourage you to choose.
And using one of Alex's templates, you can also take a look at the health fact sheet, because that can give you an idea of just what do you want to emphasize for people out there to see, even if it's not in reaction to another article. So please take a few minutes, keep your sound on, and I'll call us back together in about 6 minutes now. Okay, can everybody either rejoin us, or if you need another minute, just raise your hand so I can see that you need another minute, and we'll give you that before we reconvene here. Okay, so we're gonna, it looks like one or two of you could use a little more time, so we're gonna give you another minute or two. Hey, I'm going to ask people to rejoin us. I love the conversation that's going on in the chat room. It looks like several of you started organizing around the same source, the East Bay Times. Blake, that raises a really interesting question. Can you talk about that? Is it good to try to pick one that other people are not responding to, so we're not duplicating our efforts? Or is it okay for several people to respond to the same newspaper and figure they'll pick, it might increase their chances of picking one? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think it's okay if multiple people respond to one publication or send multiple letters. And if anything, it might increase the chance of one being published and show the editor that a lot of people care about the topic at hand.
So for those of you that were trying your hand at putting together a brief and pithy and wonderful LTE, talk to us. How did it feel? Did you feel comfortable doing it? Were you able to do it? Did any questions come up that you didn't have before?
The template was really helpful, and it kind of also biased me. So my first time doing, I'm like, template is good. I'm going to stick close to it. But then the fact sheet was really helpful because the fact sheet talked about, I don't know which one it was, talked about the economic impact, like it can create more jobs. So there are different angles to write the same letter. So I found it helpful.
Yes, Bill, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I really like the advice to make it specific. And I really like the make polluters pay. So I was able to find that my county, Sacramento County, which people don't usually associate with oil and gas production, has 130 idle wells, 114 of which are owned by a single company. And the estimated cost to plug those would be 0.03% of their annual profits. So I put all that stuff in my draft letter, and I think that really helps. And I also called on our senator from my district, Senator Niello, who is a Republican and an automobile salesman. I mean, he owns automobile companies and has been a big fan of oil and gas and the automotive industry. So I called out him at the end too.
Lovely. It sounds like a very effective LTE. I look forward to you sending it out. If it gets published, will you just drop us a line and let us know?
Of course, this will be about the 4th or 5th I've submitted, none of which have gotten published. So
One of
I'm
these
not
will-
optimistic, but I've learned a lot today from Blake and Alex, so maybe that'll change.
Great. Anyone else, Ritu or Wendy, anything else that you want to ask or say, or whatever your learnings are, just share? Oh, Wendy, it looks like you have to leave. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Any other comments that anyone wants to make? Amanda, yes.
There was one thing I was going to say earlier, and then one thing that came up when I was actually doing it. But in terms of I think, Blake, when we were prepping for this with you, one thing that really left a big impact on me was when we were looking at, at first it was like, okay, to respond to it, what are the chances that I'm going to see a specific article about AB 1866 and respond to it? But then I forget who had authored one of the LTEs we looked at, but she was basically writing in response to an article that was just about climate change, which thankfully many of our publications are now, for better, well, I would say for better, but also because there's more climate events covering, I think it was, I forget, it was like in response to heat waves. And then she linked it back to I forget exactly, basically said we're having this big heat wave, it's causing all these problems, and our idle wells are making things worse because they're actively leaking methane, blah, blah, and so I just wanted to put that in as well, because I thought that really opened my eyes to okay, the odds of us finding something we can respond to that's somehow related to climate change are pretty high, especially right now. And then the question, Blake, that I had for you, so the way that I can't remember if we brought this up already, but the bill actually is going to be heard on Monday, and will either get out of appropriations and go to a full Senate floor vote or not. So in my LTE, my call to action, even though I'm not her constituent, was, let me just say, to Senate Appropriations Chair Caballero. Do you think that's appropriate, given if I were to just submit this now, the timing of it, does that seem right to you?
Yeah, I think as an appropriations chair, that does make sense. She is going to be a pretty hard vote, but yeah, I think maybe calling her out will work. But she is a pretty tough target.
Okay.
One of the things I would mention, just because, Amanda, you're absolutely right, a key vote is next Monday. If any of you are planning to submit in the next day or two, another thing is that the building trades submitted a letter of opposition, which is being taken really seriously and strongly and might derail this 1866. So if anybody wanted to take on countering some of their points, that would be lovely. I'll again send that letter to Amanda after this, and Amanda can send it out to all of you with the materials that she's going to send you after this, in case you want to include that. I want to thank Alex and Blake for taking so much time preparing and for presenting such useful information. I hope for all of you and for anyone who watched this video in the future, it takes the mystery out of it and makes us all feel very comfortable that we can do this. This is not rocket science. And I hope that's the message that it leaves you with. Thank you so much for joining us. Amanda, I'd like to turn it over to you. Do you have any last things you want to say?
No, well, not really. Thank you all, Blake. Thank you, Thea and Alex. Thank you. I just want to, I know, Bill, you said you submitted a bunch and not had them published. I have also, but we've also had people submit them and they got published, and anything is possible. The world is our oyster. So I wouldn't say, as somebody who's also tried to submit a bunch and had mixed results, keep it up, because they they do publish them, and our voices are important and unique. So we should use them. But yeah, I'll send all of this around sometime later this afternoon. Yeah.
Thank you again, everybody, for participating.
And if you can take a minute to just fill out our evaluation form, I just put it in the chat. That would be fabulous. Thank you.
Great.
All
Everyone
right.
Have a great
Thank
afternoon.
Thank
Bye,
you, everyone.
Bye.
Good job, guys. Good job, Alex. Feel better. I hope your voice comes back. Alrighty. Bye, guys.